Mohammed Hijab, the internet's favorite Muslim and also agitator. You often find him at protests intimidating people, and as of recently, on the losing side of court decisions, facing financial ruin to the tune of hundreds of thousands of pounds. Over 850,000 to be exact, all thanks to Douglas Murray and the Spectator, whose side achieved such a decisive legal victory that Hijab's appeal was entirely rejected. But before all that, we need to rewind to 2022, to a city most people outside England rarely think about, Leicester. That September, Leicester became ground zero for a bizarre chapter in British multiculturalism. A city divided after an India-Pakistan cricket match somehow escalated into weeks of communal riots between local Hindus and Muslims. Enter Mohammed Hijab, a London-based YouTuber and self-described Islamic activist with over 1.3 million subscribers. For reasons known only to him and perhaps the algorithm, he decided to travel to Leicester, megaphone in hand, to help. What followed looked less like peacemaking and more like a scene from a medieval pep rally. Surrounded by masked young men, Hijab launched into a speech mocking the Hindu belief in reincarnation, asking how anyone could stomach being reborn as, quote,
"What a humiliation and pathetic thing for them to be reincarnated into some pathetic, weak, cowardly people like that. I'd rather be an animal. I'd rather be reincarnated as a grasshopper, bro."
The video went viral almost instantly. Hijab would later insist he wasn't insulting Hindus, only Hindutva extremists. A distinction that, as the court later noted, didn't exactly survive contact with reality. A week later, Douglas Murray, columnist, author, and professional heretic of polite society, weighed in through the Spectator. His piece, titled Leicester and the Downside with Diversity, argued that Hijab wasn't a healer, but a street agitator who had cropped up in Leicester to whip up his followers. Murray didn't stop there. He connected the dots to earlier Hijab stunts and anti-Israeli protests where a masked associate shouted about wanting Jewish blood, and a trip to Golders Green, a Jewish neighborhood that residents viewed as straight-up intimidation. The picture he painted was clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. Hijab, of course, disagreed. In December 2024, he filed a defamation lawsuit against the Spectator and Murray personally, claiming they had destroyed his reputation and cost him financially. He said the article scared off lucrative deals, a £30,000 Ramadan fundraiser, a £3,500 a month One Ummah ambassadorship, and a £1,500 a month sponsorship with Nature's Blends. He even added a data protection claim, arguing that quoting him as saying Hindus instead of Hindutva amounted to publishing false personal data. Hijab in this instance wasn't only suing for defamation, he was actually throwing the entire UK legal system at the wall to see what stuck. Except, as we now know, none of it did. Now, before we get to the next part, if you're enjoying this video so far, please remember to give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and consider signing up on Patreon, which comes with a ton of perks. Hijab's defense rested on a single, fragile pillar. You've all misunderstood me. His fiery speech in Leicester, he insisted, wasn't an attack on Hindus. Heavens no. It was aimed at Hindutva extremists. In his telling, pathetic, weak, cowardly people referred not to a religion, but to an ideology. It was, he argued, a political critique that everyone else just somehow misheard over the shouting and Allahu Akbar chants. To prove this, Hijab offered a redefinition of Hindutva so broad it could apparently include anyone with a right-wing pulse. Under oath, he claimed that Tommy Robinson, Benjamin Netanyahu, and even Douglas Murray himself were all examples of Hindutva adherents. The court, one imagines, paused to process the idea of Israel's Prime Minister moonlighting as a Hindu nationalist. A particular telling moment came during cross-examination. When asked to name anyone in the world who subscribed to Hindutva but wasn't Hindu, Hijab doubled down. The only name he could conjure was Benjamin Netanyahu. The silence that followed probably said more than any rebuttal could. Justice Johnson later described this semantic gymnastics as an unreal construct. The judge noted that those who espouse Hindutva are overwhelmingly Hindu, especially in the Leicester context. Everyone watching Hijab that night knew exactly who he was talking about. The Hindu men across the street. The court concluded his wordplay was simple deniability theatre, and that Murray's article hadn't misrepresented him at all. Unfortunately, this case these days is a rarity. More people are getting censored online, And in countries like the UK, digital ID laws, surveillance, and criminalization of unacceptable speech, even on online platforms, is becoming common. That's exactly why I use Proton VPN and why I think you should too. They're based in Switzerland, outside the reach of US, EU, UK, and Australian law. They don't keep logs and are built by the same team behind Proton Mail. When the UK passed its surveillance laws, Proton VPN became the #1 app on the App Store. Their stealth protocol beats censorship firewalls. Secure Core routes your traffic through privacy-first countries, and NetShield blocks trackers before they ever reach you. I've used Proton Mail since Australia announced sweeping surveillance laws last year, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's now essential. If you want to protect your privacy and support this channel, hit the link below to get up to 60% off Proton VPN. By mid-2025, the drama had moved from YouTube to the High Court in London. The case hinged on two questions. First, whether the Spectator article caused serious harm to Mohammed Hijab's reputation, the legal bar set by the UK Defamation Act 2013, and second, whether Douglas Murray's claims were substantially true. On both counts, Hijab struck out spectacularly. On the serious harm test, the judge ruled that Hijab hadn't proved any new damage. His own videos, the ones where he ridicules Hindus and spars with Jewish protesters, were, as the judgment put it, at least as reputationally damaging to him as the article. In plain English, he had already tanked his own image. The supposed evidence of lost sponsorships? The court said those emails looked contrived for the purpose of these proceedings. Even his social media metrics refused to cooperate. Followers went up, not down. Worse, the judge noted Hijab seemed to revel in notoriety, once even printing t-shirts calling himself Instigator-in-Chief. Hardly the behaviour of a man traumatized by bad press. Even if serious harm had been shown, the defense of truth would have finished him anyway. Video evidence proved Murray's description, that Hijab whipped up a mob in Leicester, was accurate. His later claim that he had meant Hindutva, not Hindus, didn't convince the court either. Justice Johnson found the article's sting substantially true. Hijab had fanned sectarian flames. Finally, the judge's patience snapped entirely. Hijab, he wrote, lied on significant issues. His evidence overall is worthless. From fabricated contracts to far-fetched denials about Holocaust imagery, every lie dug the hole deeper. Yes, dear viewer, a High Court just ruled that one of the world's foremost Muslim influencers was a serial liar whose evidence was quite literally worthless. In the end, the High Court's decision was a total wipeout. The judge threw out both his claims, defamation and that last-ditch data protection argument in their entirety. Sure, the Spectator article was technically defamatory and clearly about him, but that didn't matter. There was no serious harm to his reputation, and even if there had been, the article's core was true. For Hijab, the aftermath was brutal. Not only did he get nothing, he now owed everything. Under UK law, when you lose a civil case, you usually pay the other side's costs, and in this case, that meant hundreds of thousands of pounds. Hijab even boasted online that he had been given a bill of £670,000. Then, after his failed appeal the other day, he admitted the total had climbed to around £850,000, almost £1 million in liabilities for the man who set out to defend his reputation. By the end, it appears the financial sting was so much, he had dropped his lawyers and was representing himself. The Spectator and Douglas Murray walked away completely vindicated, their reporting confirmed as factual and in the public interest. The magazine later called it what it was, a failed attempt to intimidate journalists. There is an even bigger irony here. The court didn't order any takedown or gagging. The Spectator's article is still online, I'll leave the link down below. Now, with more readers than ever, Hijab didn't silence Douglas Murray, he just gave him the best publicity money can't buy. People like Mohammed Hijab have built empires on outrage, on bullying critics into silence, on using platforms and institutions as weapons against those who challenge them. But this time, it backfired. The court saw straight through it. The truth held firm. And for once, someone like Hijab faced real consequences for his lies. This ruling is a massive win for free speech and for free press. It proves that journalists and writers still have the right to scrutinize extremists, even when those extremists try to hide behind legal threats and victimhood. Truth is still a defense, and a powerful one. Hijab tried to turn the British legal system into a tool of intimidation, but instead, he ended up funding one of the clearest victories for press freedom in recent memory. That's justice. But this is no time to relax. The fight against ideological bullies like hijab isn't over. They'll keep trying to police speech and silence dissent. The only answer is to keep speaking, louder, clearer, and without apology. I've always said on this channel, that's how you defeat them. Not with anger, not with censorship, but with courage and truth.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, steel towers hum, but the wild runs on. A shadow moves through the circus below, half machine, half beast, with a violet glow. They thought the outback was lost to the flame, but a jingle